Today on Up Front, are Wisconsin Republicans all aboard the Trump train? Some prominent members of the state GOP say they aren't there yet. Next, Assembly Speaker and GOP Delegate Robin Vos on what Trump has to do to bring conservatives around. Plus, what the UW faculty's no confidence votes mean for the system and the legislature. And why a former justice says it's time to change the way we select members of the state Supreme Court.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. And then there was one. New York billionaire Donald Trump is the presumptive Republican nominee for president. Republican National Committee Chair Reince Priebus, the Wisconsin guy, says it's time for the party to unify and get behind Trump. But some Republicans aren't quite ready to do that. That includes Janesville Congressman and Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, who said last week that he could not support Trump at this point in time. Our next guest also said he would withhold judgment on Trump, for now at least. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, who's also a GOP national delegate. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate being here.
So what would Donald Trump have to do to sway you and persuade you to get behind him and work for him in the fall?
Well, as I said in my statement, I've been a Republican since before I could vote. So I am proud of our party. I believe in common sense conservatism, which means smaller government, lower taxes, regulations that make sense to keep an economy growing and moving. I want to hear that from Donald Trump. What I have heard is some bluster, some vague promises, but I want specific policy proposals that show why a Donald Trump presidency would make America better, not by just having a new slogan, but by having policies that put more money in the pockets of middle-class families, create more jobs, help to reduce our tax burden, make our public benefits programs more accountable to the taxpayers. All of those things are possible, but I haven't heard enough specifics to make me realize that he is a conservative who can actually win.
You're willing to be persuaded, I hear you say.
I'm open to it. I mean, the one thing I know without a doubt is that Hillary Clinton would be a disaster for our nation. If you look at all of the controversy she's been involved in with the email scandal, Benghazi, pretty much a failed Secretary of State, I look and say she's not right for our country. I certainly know that to be a fact. But Donald Trump still has to win people over. Just because I'm a Republican doesn't mean everybody falls in line and we all just assume that because he's won the nomination that we're going to accept whatever his views are. I want him to accept the conservative views that are in our platform, that people fight for, and that we all stand for.
You don't really think he's a conservative, though, do you? You're very skeptical.
I'm skeptical. I think that, since I said I've been a Republican for literally most of my life, Donald Trump's gone back and forth. And of course, we welcome new people to join our party because they believe in our ideas. I don't want somebody who says that they're okay with more government or more regulations. I mean, I'm a free trader. I want to make sure we have the most possible trade to create the highest number of jobs in our country. I don't want walls put up with trade barriers. So certain simple things like that, I want to see a more articulate vision of creating jobs in America by using the principles that we all agree on, not putting up a bunch of walls and making us an island in the world.
I want to go back to Robin Vos in late March before the primary. And you said that if Donald Trump were the party nominee, it would be disastrous, that the party would lose seats further down the ballot. How could you possibly support him if you think he's going to be disastrous and would lose to Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, I certainly think that is my presumption today.
That he would lose?
That he would probably lose to Hillary Clinton.
And it would hurt the party?
He could, and that's why a lot of it depends on how he conducts himself between now and the fall. If Donald Trump begins to offer specific policy proposals that reinforce what Republicans believe, the common sense principles that I know in a center-right nation people would rally around, I think that would help our ticket. I just haven't seen it in the first 6 months of this campaign, which is why we're focusing on our record. The nice part for me, Mike, is that as I go door to door myself, as I talk to my colleagues all across the state, when they're going out seeking nomination signatures and getting ready to run in the fall, people are proud of where Wisconsin's gone. If you're a Republican, you look and you say we have right to work, we have prevailing wage reform, we reduced income taxes, held property taxes frozen, a UW tuition freeze, more money for public schools, lots of things to be proud of. If you're an independent or a lean Democrat, we have a lot of things to be proud of too. More money for schools, we saved senior care, more money for Badger Care, we focused on Alzheimer's and dementia, we dealt with the heroin epidemic. So we have a great record to run on of getting things done that frankly, there's a little bit more that needs to get done in Washington, which is why that frustration exists with the Donald Trump voter.
And you said you understand that frustration. Did the party establishment not listen to what the people have been saying?
No, I don't even know if it's specifically a party. Let's just be honest and say if you look at Washington, there's been a whole lot of folks who haven't gotten as much done for the people who elected them as they frankly should. Paul Ryan has turned things around in a way that I'm incredibly proud. More legislation is getting done in Washington to move Wisconsin and the country forward.
He's not unfit to be speaker.
No,
is he? I mean, somebody suggested that last week, someone with the Trump campaign.
Yeah, that is silly. I mean, we all know that the smartest person in Washington right now is Paul Ryan, and he is leading in a way that I am incredibly proud. But that's what Americans want. They want things to work. They want Republicans and Democrats to argue it out, find an answer we can live with, sticking to our principles, and getting the country moving forward. That's what I want, and I think that's why people are frustrated, because they don't see it as much as it should.
Speaking of frustration and your legislative record, which you were just talking about, people on UW campuses around the state, very frustrated, taking these no confidence votes in the president of the UW system, Ray Cross, and the Board of Regents. What's the impact of those no confidence votes?
I think it's minimal, to be honest. I think it's...
That's not going to be held against the UW system when you start having budget deliberations, and there are going to be people maybe in your party who are saying, why are we helping these people out? They're bad-mouthing us.
Yeah, but it's not about the faculty. I mean, I guess when I look at the UW system, I look at the students who are there, the economic engine that happens all across the state, quite frankly, in every campus. So I was saddened, and I've said that very publicly, that we had to make the reductions to the UW. We reduced the cut from where Governor Walker first had it, so it was better than it could have been. But do I think there was waste and mismanagement at the university campuses? Yes, which is why having some of those reductions occurred to get the waste and the fat out of the system. One of those things that I thought was not all that helpful was having guaranteed jobs for life, which is what tenure really was. Frankly, for a lot of my colleagues, myself included, I might have gotten rid of tenure altogether because I think it's an anachronistic idea to have a guaranteed job for life. But I certainly respect the fact that the regents took a different direction. We gave them that authority, and they basically kept tenure almost exactly as it always had been. And then for the faculty to have less confidence in the regents because they didn't, kowtow to every single wish and whim that they had, that's disappointing to not just me as a legislator. I think it's disappointing to taxpayers all across the state who want a good, productive university system that's focused on the students, not on the faculty.
Given the commitments you've made to certain tax cuts and tax policy in this state, isn't it quite likely that the UW system will be facing more cuts in the next budget?
Oh, I certainly hope not. I do not.
Is it possible?
Well, anything's possible. We could go into a recession. We could have a massive problem if Hillary Clinton gets elected and the economy goes into the tank. So a lot of things could definitely happen. But my hope right now is that we will continue to do what we have done in the past. Invest more money in public education, where we gave a couple $100 million increase. My hope would be, at worst, to hold the university flat funded. I don't want additional cuts if we can help it at all. But are there areas we should try to focus our efforts? Yeah, I want to make the university as efficient as it can be, keep the research going, focus on growing our economy. Those are all positive things that, regardless of your party, we should all rally around, and I think legislators will continue to do so.
And no hard feelings with the faculty?
Not with me, no.
Not on your part?
No.
All right. Speaker of the Assembly, Robin Vos, good to have you back on the program.
Thanks, Mike. I enjoyed it.
Now it's time to tell us what you think. Are you a Republican who can get behind Donald Trump for president? You can tell us by liking and sharing Upfront on Facebook. And later on Upfront, the role organized labor will play in the race for the White House this fall. I'll ask a national labor leader about the appeal of Donald Trump to union members. But first, the former state Supreme Court justice who now says it's time to stop electing justices and start appointing them. That's when Upfront continues.
Upfront with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.